All right. Hello again, adventures, and welcome to another daily vlog. This is daily vlog number 9, I think, somewhere around there. So today, I still feel like shit. Still have not. I was able to stomach a cheeseburger. And by cheeseburger, I mean I have these like frozen burgers that you put in the microwave. I was able to eat that, and I felt like shit afterwards, and have eaten nothing since then. And that was yesterday, I think. I don't know. So still feel like shit, and I'm not happy with that. This is a slight update. My computer is remarkably quiet right now, and it's worrying me because it used to be I'd push the power button and then I'd hear this like phew, as like the fans just start running for a second and then go, and now I push the power button and nothing. And I've gone through and checked to make sure all of my fans are working, and apparently the video card I had before this one was just really loud. That's all I can tell. Now, if my computer explodes in the next couple of days, we will know that I broke something. But I don't think I did anything with any of the fans. They're just really quiet. And I have a bunch of programs on my computer that check temp levels and can control the fans manually and stuff like that. So it's weird. Anyway, so enough about that. I want to talk about a corporation that has just backstabbed all of the people that work for them. And just really is probably one of the most disgusting groups I have ever heard of. And that corporation is the Screen Actors Guild and the American Federation of Television something, whatever, AFTRA. Television and Radio Artists. There we go. What are you guys talking about? That's not a corporation. That's a union, and they work for the people. No, they don't. News came out, and by news came out, this was not like a secret leak or anything. SAG-AFTRA posted this on their Twitter because they are so out of touch and feel that they are so untouchable that they don't care that they are announcing this. They partnered with another company that I can't remember right now to create AI voice work. If you remember that big strike thing? One of the biggest hot button topics that left both writers and actors out of work, and the entire industry. Like, everyone talks about how, writers and actors were out of work. Nobody talks about the fact that all the tech people were out of work. Basically, all the people that are not writers and actors were also all out of work. None of them got anything from that. Like, there's actual funds that unions have to help union members, pay for bills and stuff like that during a strike. I don't know how many people get access to that fund. I do not know anyone personally that has told me that they were able to access that fund when they were out of work for so long. Mostly because most of the actors that I know were out of work before all that stuff happened, because SAG-AFTRA has such a stranglehold on the market that it makes being an actor almost impossible to do unless you are Will Smith. But if you remember, one of the big things was AI, and we can't let AI take us over and everything like that. And SAG-AFTRA was fighting against AI and making sure AI wasn't going to be a thing. And then when they actually made the announcement of what the actual deal was, they went, well, AI is okay as long as you agree to it. And then their union members went, well, what happens if I say no when the company says we want to record your voice to make AI versions of it? And SAG-AFTRA goes, well, then they can fire you and then just hire someone who will let them do that. And so the union members went, so wait a minute, that means that we're not protected from AI, because if we refuse to do it, we just don't work. Is that what you mean? No, you are protected because you have to give them your permission to do it. And they're like, but they can fire us if we say no. So how is that protecting us? It just means that the only actors that will be working will be the ones that are okay with their voice being used in AI. Yeah, but they're okay with that. So that's okay. Well, sure enough, SAG-AFTRA has just partnered with a company to create AI stuff. Now, I've not read the thing, so there's a very, very good chance that I do not understand the entirety of it. But that's not really the point of this video. I'm not here to explain the deal that they made. There are, like I said, type SAG AI. You'll find 100 articles on it. And a lot of actors that are pissed off, including, I think it was Steve Bloom, replied to it. I might be thinking of the wrong person. But he's a big name voice actor, someone that I have the utmost respect for. Replies because apparently in the article they said something like, we talked about the we talked to the people that would be affected by this and they're okay with it, or something along that lines. I'm paraphrasing. And Steve Bloom just goes, who did you talk to? Like, video games and voiceover is what I do. Nobody talked to me at all. And that's literally all I do. I would definitely be affected by this. Who did you talk to? So the reason I wanted to talk about this is the reason why, and I can't remember if I've said this publicly or not. At one point, I was an aspiring actor, and in my personal opinion, I was a pretty damn good one. Since becoming disabled, I can't be an actor anymore. I can't memorize lines. I have a hard time dealing with people, which is a big part of acting, unless I want to do exclusively monologue work. And just with my health the way that it is, I would never be able to do anything in that field. However, I still consider myself an actor. And when I first got into acting, I talked to my advisor before dropping out of college and said, "Hey, do you think I could become a professional actor? Do you think I need to stay here for another 2 more years?" And he said, "You know what? I think you've got what it takes to be an actor, and I don't think there's a whole lot more that you're going to be able to learn here, personally." And so what he did was he go, "Hey, call this agency, ask for this particular person, tell them Tom Bruno sent you." I said, "Okay." And so I did. I called up this agency and I said, "Hey, my name is Jody Hall. You guys don't know me, but I'd like to talk to this particular person." And they said, "Okay," and they transferred me to her. And I said, "Hi, my name is Jody Hall. Tom Bruno told me to call you." And she goes, "Okay, when are you free?" I said, "Well, I'm really free anytime. When would be convenient?" And they're like, "Can you come in?" I think it was like the next day or something. Absolutely. And so I had to drive in about an hour into Milwaukee, which is where my agency was. And I drive in. I have my resume. I don't have headshots yet because headshots are ungodly expensive and I had no money. So I got my resume, my acting resume, which is different than a regular resume. And I come in and I bring it in. I'm ready to do monologues and all these other things that I've been told to prepare for auditions. And I sit down and she goes, "Okay." And so I give her my resume. She goes, she looks it over a little bit. She goes, "So how do you know Tom?" I said, "Well, Tom was my advisor at school and my professor. I went to this local college and he was a professor there until fairly recently." She goes, "Okay, so this is the contract and this is how things are going to work." And without ever seeing me utter a single line of dialogue, I had an agent. And the goal with getting that agent was for me to get my vouchers. And the reason why I was living in Wisconsin as opposed to Chicago or LA was because it was technically easier to get my vouchers here than it was in either of those two cities where there's a lot more filming that goes on. The reason why is there's not as many SAG members here. And to get your voucher, I've explained this before, you actually had to be in a SAG production. And the only way they're allowed to hire non-SAG actors to be in a SAG production is if there literally isn't enough SAG actors there. So it technically should have been a little bit easier for me to get my SAG card here than it would have been if I'd moved to somewhere that actually has significantly more opportunities for me to act. And moving across country is extremely expensive, and I didn't want to do that. Yet, I had always planned to move to LA. So back then, I wanted so badly to become a member of SAG-AFTRA. That was my goal. That was the big thing. And for a lot of actors, that is a huge milestone, is getting your SAG card. Fun fact, if you're moving to LA, unless you are Keanu Reeves or Millie Bobby Brown, you can't get an agent without a SAG card. And you can't get actual paying gigs without an agent. So a lot of people that go to LA to become an actor become waiters. And that's all they ever do because it is such a strange place to actually work. And it's so convoluted to be able to get your SAG card. And even then, once you get your SAG card, you have to be really, really lucky to actually make money. So anyway, my plan for forever was to join Screen Actors Guild. And I've mentioned before, I'm very anti-union. I've been in a union before. It was before Wisconsin became a right-to-work state, so I had no choice in joining the union. I was working in a place that had a union, and so I had to belong to that union. And it was probably the worst working experience of my life. Nobody did their jobs. The store itself was a nightmare to work in because the employees themselves were effectively untouchable by management. Meaning we actually had a note on our union board that was basically an employee came into work late multiple times, got written up for it. They contacted their union rep, and the union rep went, "No, you are not allowed to discipline our union members. So you need to tear up that write-up, and we will take care of it." And they did absolutely nothing. And so the union had created this just incredibly toxic workplace where no one would do their job, and it was incredibly horrible to work for. And that's not an uncommon thing with a lot of unions. Unions were really important for probably about maybe 60 or 70 years. Like the 5-day work week, the 8-hour workday, lunch breaks, child labor laws, all of these things directly because of unions. So I'm not saying that unions have always been horrible, disgusting. I'm not one of those evil capitalists. No, unions had their place, and they used to provide an exceptionally needed service. They no longer do that. Mostly because the laws are so protective of employees now that it's remarkably difficult to legally exploit your employees. The law is very, very heavily favored to employees over employers, and it has been for decades at this point. And there's a thing called the Department of Labor. They have offices in every state, and most major cities will have a Department of Labor office in it. If you are ever wondering if your employer is doing something shady, if you think you're being exploited, you call the Department of Labor. You talk to a real-life human being. It's not particularly difficult. I've done it myself on multiple occasions. You explain the situation. They will tell you if they personally think you're being exploited, and if they think you are, they can have you file a report. And if enough reports are filed in a certain time frame, they investigate the business, and none of this costs a penny to you unless you have to pay for the phone call for whatever reason. If you don't have enough minutes, obviously that's going to cause an issue. So the big reason why unions are supposed to exist is to protect their union members from exploitation from employers. And employers just simply can't do that very easily. They have to be. It's remarkably difficult to exploit your employees nowadays. And I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing. The laws have caught up with most of the ways that employers have been able to exploit. And even ways that people think employers exploit employees don't actually happen. Like one of my favorite examples is people will say, God, unpaid internships are just exploitation. Like it's just free labor. It's actually not. There are very, very strict laws about how internships work, and the basic letter of the law is if you have an intern, first things first, you have to be associated with some kind of educational facility, a college, university, something like that. You are not allowed to just take someone on and say, well, you're an intern. The focus of the internship has to be educational. Second real big sticking point for internships, they're not allowed to do work that you profit off of. And what I mean by that, and again, this is laid out really, really strictly, but basically, you are not allowed to use an intern to replace the job of someone you would normally pay. Now, they can do the same job as someone you are already paying, but you cannot use an intern to do work that if you didn't have the intern, you would have to pay someone to do. They can only do additional work, and that additional work has to be educational in some way, shape, or form. Interns cannot do work that is necessary for the business to function. This is all law. This is not like a ruling over here. This is written into, I believe it's the Fair Labor Standards Act. I can't remember which big labor law actually covers interns, but I believe it's the Fair Labor Standards Act. 9 times out of 10, if there's a labor law, it's somewhere in there. It's a really good law to know. And it's massive. So, yeah, like a lot of people just don't understand what things are legal or not. And because of that, one of the things that I've seen some people argue for unions is like, well, you know, having to understand what all your rights are is really hard. The union takes care of that for you. No, they don't, actually. And they haven't for decades. Unions thrive on people that don't understand their rights because they can claim that they are giving them protections that they can't actually give. The idea that unions protect you from being fired if you get injured, they don't. That's already illegal. Again, Fair Labor Standards Act. It's already illegal. They protect you for being discriminated based on your sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, all those things, aside from gender identity, because that hasn't been codified into law yet. All the rest of those, already illegal. Don't need a union to protect you from all that. The one thing that unions can claim that they do is because of collective bargaining, they can claim that they can get you a better paycheck and better, what are they called? Benefits. And for the most part, they generally tend to do that, but they do it remarkably poorly, and the amount of money that you pay them generally gets rid of any benefit that you get from the collective bargaining. I did a paper on this when I was in college the second time, and basically what I was able to find through really, really simple means. So this is not, I do not want anyone citing me in like an educational, this was a paper for a class on persuasive writing. So take it with a grain of salt. But basically, I was talking about right to work versus non-right to work. And basically, the big argument for staying non-right to work, which if you don't know, right to work basically just means that a union can't force you to become a member of it just because you work in a place that has a union. In non-right to work states, if 51% of the people working there decide to form a union, you're part of the union and they will take their dues out of your paycheck before you even see it, and you have no say in that. You can't opt out. There's nothing you can do. They get your money first. So what I was able to find is non-right to work states, average wages were roughly about 3% higher, but that also coincided with 3% higher unemployment rate. So yes, technically you got a little bit more money, but you might not have a job because unions reduce the number of people that are working in general, because that's just how higher wages work. And in non-right to work states, union dues run anywhere between 20 to 40% higher. So yes, you are technically getting a bigger paycheck, but they're taking a much larger chunk out of it. And a lot of that has to do with competition and a lot of other things. So again, significantly more complicated than I'm making it say, but unions in general, the only thing that they really can truthfully claim is they can fight for better wages and better benefits, but you pay for it, and you pay a lot for it. In general, you in a lot of situations, you are better off not being a part of a union and just understanding how to negotiate a salary than you are being a part of a union and having them take a massive chunk of your pay, whether they're doing a good job or not. Going back to SAG-AFTRA, for a long time, SAG-AFTRA was one of the few unions that I believed in because labor laws hadn't quite caught up to acting, because acting is a weird job. It is just the strangest thing in the world. It's gig economy, even crazier than that, because technically you are an independent contractor, but you're not really, because the director is telling you exactly how to do your stuff, and you can lose your job for a lot of different reasons that have nothing to do with protected classes. If you're too tall, which is not a protected class, they can fire you just because, the person that you're on screen with, the height differential is too weird. Or you might remind one of the people working on the production of their ex, and they go, fuck this shit, I'm not working with that person because they remind me of my ex. This is a real thing that has happened, by the way. I don't think anyone was fired for it, but I do know I do know a specific person that auditioned for a role, didn't get the role, not because they wouldn't have been perfect for it, but because they reminded the casting director of their ex, and it got through because they'd been working in the industry for a fairly long time at that point, and so they just were able to go, hey, by the way, I always wondered why I didn't get this particular role. I thought everyone in the room really liked it. And somebody went, oh yeah, no, you look like their ex-husband. And they went, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. I wouldn't have hired me either. So yeah, so I used to support SAG-AFTRA. I don't anymore. After the bullshit that they pulled with the negotiations, when they finally had ironed out a deal, and then union leadership just went, oh, by the way, we're also going to charge you for every subscriber that you have to all the streaming companies. And everybody left the table at that point and said, fuck you. Yeah, that was that. I've never heard of that ever happening in any union ever. The way that unions make their money is they collect dues from their employees. To my knowledge, I've never heard of a union getting paid directly from the employer. That, to my understanding, that's illegal. Because it's a form of extortion, kind of. It's not technically extortion, but it doesn't the National Labor Relations Act and National Labor Relations Act, so NLRA, is the law that governs unions and things like that, and that is 100% in violation of that. But SAG-AFTRA is so big, and they have such a monopoly over California. That they thought they could get away with it, and they lost that. I don't know if that made it into the actual agreement, because I never got a chance to read the agreement. It became too much for me. Now, again, they claimed that they were fighting for AI protections. They did it, and now they've actually partnered with a company that is going to help create AI voice actors. And a lot of people are up in arms in this. I personally, even if somehow I was able to get a hold over my anxiety and my PTSD and all that stuff, was able to get to the point where I could actually work again, I would never join the Screen Actors Guild. I would do FICOR, which is basically paying union dues without belonging to the union, because legally they can make it so you can never work. So what some people do that don't like the Screen Actors Guild is they'll do FICOR, which is basically, I'm paying you my dues, but I'm not a union member. You can't tell me what to do. I'm paying your extortion fee. Now, the likelihood of that ever happening, almost zero. I think there's like a 0.000 repeating 700 times one chance that I could ever become a working actor. But if I could, I will never join the Screen Actors Guild, because it's massively corrupt, and this shows it. I made mention in a Twitch chat, because I was talking to an actor friend of mine who streams, and he goes, yeah, I saw that. And I'm like, yeah, it's almost like the Screen Actors Guild has never actually cared about their members, and only cares about making as much money as possible for their officers, like every other union. Again, up until, I think it was like 2015 or 2014, unions were not required, at least in the state of Wisconsin. I don't know if it was a federal thing, but I know in the state of Wisconsin, unions were not required to file any reports about where their money goes. Unions are generally nonprofits. Really, phone? All right, I'll be right back, guys. Sorry. This is what happens when you forget your phone on your bed. All right. Sorry about that. So, what was I saying? So, yeah, up until like 2014, 2015, unions, because they are nonprofits, they are required to release kind of overall funding things like any nonprofit. They have to tell you how much money they made and roughly how they're spending it, but they never had to itemize anything. Well, there was a law passed in Wisconsin, at least, I don't know if it was federally, that actually required them to break down where their money was going. And one of the things that people found out, and it must have been federal because I was able to see numbers from other states, is union reps got paid a shit ton. Like the vast majority of union dues did nothing to help union members. Vast majority went to paying the union leaders who got paid big bucks, like 6-7 figure salaries to be a union leader. Everybody got paid significantly more than anyone else in the companies that they were representing. They just got paid shit tons of money. And then the money that didn't go to paying the inflated salaries of these union leaders went to lobbying against right to work laws. Like that's where all of their union money was going to, was lobbying efforts and paying the union reps. The actual money that went towards collective bargaining and stuff like that was infinitesimally small. Because remarkably enough, collective bargaining is not a remarkably difficult thing to do. Getting everyone to kind of stick together, that's kind of difficult. But once you have them, the actual bargaining process is super, super simple. Because the way that the National Labor Relations Act is written heavily favors unions over employers. Employers, if union members go on strike, employers are not allowed to hire permanent replacements for them. They can hire temporary people, but they are not allowed to give anyone permanent status if they are replacing union workers that are striking. What that effectively means is if a union strikes for whatever reason and they're being unreasonable, there's literally fuck all a business can do. Because hiring employees that are not permanent employees has its own set of risks and costs associated with it, and it's remarkably difficult to find people to actually hire in that particular instance. Really good example was at Hostess, I think it was. The union members, or the union itself decided, no, we're going to go on strike because we want better pay. And the business basically said, we don't have the money for that. This was, I think, during the Great Recession back in like 2008, 2009. There was the company basically said, yeah, no, we cannot afford this. We're in a recession right now. We're not making a lot of money. If you guys try to get more money, we're just going to close the business. And the union went, ha ha, you can't do that. And they did. Hostess went out of business in the U.S. It got purchased by a Canadian company. Or maybe it wasn't Hostess, but the people that make Twinkies went out of business. And all of the union members lost their jobs. And there was nothing they could do about it. They didn't get a chance to choose, and the union reps lied to them blatantly, saying, nah, they have all the money in the world, they just don't want to give it to you. And they really didn't, and so they closed it. And that's happened quite a few other times. That was just the biggest instance of it. Unions are unbelievably corrupt now. And they are incentivized heavily to keep their union representatives as happy as physically possible by paying them exorbitant amounts and basically just really using the labor as a way to extort more monies out of business. Does that mean that businesses are in the clear and they're good? No, there's a lot of corrupt businesses too. I'm not saying that. I'm not pro big pharma or anything like that. I just know that unions are a scam. And now it's becoming apparent that SAG-AFTRA is 100% a scam. First of all, fun facts about SAG-AFTRA. I've mentioned this before, but I always want to bring this up. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 86 to 87% of SAG-AFTRA members do not qualify for health benefits. That's one of the things that SAG prides themselves on, is the fact that in most of the U.S., the way that the majority of people get their health insurance is through their employer. And the reason that that works is the employer can buy health insurance packages for 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000 employees. And because of that, they're basically buying in bulk. The health insurance companies give them significantly better prices than individuals will get. And the employer pays part of your health insurance and you pay the other part. If anyone's ever heard the term COBRA, COBRA is basically when you leave a job, if you had health insurance, you will get a notice in the mail that you can continue the health insurance that you already have, but now you have to pay both parts. And in general, the employer pays the lion's share of it. And so when you look at it, you might have been paying like $50 to $100 a month for your health insurance. If you want the COBRA insurance, basically the same insurance plan without your employer, it jumps up to like $300, $400, $500. I have never met a single person who has ever done that because it's nonsense. You can get private insurance a hell of a lot cheaper. But yeah, so for actors, that's just not possible. For actors specifically, you generally are only going to be working anywhere from a month and a half to maybe 3 to 4 months at a time for any single employer. You might be doing multiple movies, or you generally won't do multiple TV shows because they work a lot more regularly. Yeah, you might work for multiple different things to make 2 or 3 movies in the year. So you're working maybe in a year. An actor, if they're working 6 months out of the year, that's generally a pretty good gig because you get paid a lot more than your average person, specifically because it's intended for you to have months in between jobs. So there's no possible way that they could get health insurance because most health insurance won't kick in until you've been working for the company between 30 and 60 days. So by the time the health insurance would kick in, they'd already be done. And because they keep working for different companies all the time, and technically every movie technically is a different company. If you really wanted to get into the specifics of how all this stuff works, like it's nonsense how all this stuff works money-wise. So yeah, even if you're working for Warner Brothers, well, this version of this movie is done under a different version of Warner Brothers than this one, and so they're not technically the same employer, and it's really, really complicated and nonsense. So SAG-AFTRA has bragged about the idea, well, we can get actors health insurance and benefits and things like that they can't otherwise get. Somewhere between 80 to 86, 87% of SAG-AFTRA members do not qualify for health insurance benefits. That is the vast majority of SAG-AFTRA members. You want to know what you need to do in order to qualify for SAG health insurance? You need to make somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think it's like $26,000 or $27,000 a year. In most parts of the country, that is just above the poverty line. So you basically have to not be poor as an actor. Over 80% of people that are paying $3,000 to join, and I think it's $400 or $500 a year to remain a member of the Screen Actors Guild, in addition to giving a cut of every cent that they make to the Screen Actors Guild, including royalties. Every penny you make as an actor first goes to Screen Actors Guild, and then they give you the rest. In spite of that, the vast majority of them don't even get paid enough to be poor. And the Screen Actors Guild has such a stranglehold over the entertainment industry that you cannot work in Los Angeles without being a member. You cannot be an actor in Los Angeles without being a member of the Screen Actors Guild. It's just not possible. Can you do independent films and stuff like that? Yes, you will never make a living off that. There's simply not enough there, and there's a lot of Screen Actors Guild members that will do non-union work because independent films and stuff like that are just different. They give you different experiences. They give you different opportunities to do things that you couldn't do before. So even when it's a non-union job, there's a lot of union members in there. So yeah, no, they have a complete stranglehold over, for the most part, the Western film industry, because so much of even movies that are shot in other countries, like Power Rangers. Power Rangers is shot in New Zealand. Screen Actors Guild has complete and total control over it. And that's a funny thing, because Power Rangers used to be a non-union show until I think Disney bought it and they decided to go union. Or it might have been even after that. But they went years upon years of actors being exploited by Saban, and that's a whole nother thing. And dangerous working conditions and just horrible pay and stuff like that. Screen Actors Guild could not have cared less, because they weren't union members. And they only care about their union members. And the only union members that they actually care about are the ones that make them big money. If you are not making 6 or 7 figures a year, the Screen Actors Guild really could not give a flying fuck about you. You are worthless to them. You are simply there to make them look better. The more people they have in the Screen Actors Guild, the more power they have in negotiations. You are literally a pawn. And this latest thing about AI is just the icing on the cake. They have just decided that, yep, that's what we're going to do. We're going to screw over. And again, this is not going to hurt Matt Mercer. This is not going to hurt most of the big names in voiceover. Not going to be affected by this at all. Because, or they're not going to be hurt by it. They are going to be affected by it. They're not going to be hurt by it at all, because they are big enough names that their name carries weight. And they're going to be able to make, not like a lot of money, but they're going to be able to make enough money off of this that this is not going to put them out of work. None of the A-list Hollywood actors are going to be in trouble for this at all. Like, you're not going to see Will Smith getting real sad about this, or Tom Cruise, or Millie Bobby Brown. They're all doing perfectly fine. It's basically all of the up-and-coming actors, especially voice actors, because this is, and to be perfectly honest, Screen Actors Guild has fucked over voice actors for years. It wasn't until, I want to say in the last decade or so, that they even cared about voice actors. Again, there was, I can't remember if it was a strike or it was just a big hullabaloo about it. Hullabaloo, that's the word I was looking for. Where voice actors were just trying to get better standards. Because, especially if you're doing video game voice acting, you might have an 8-hour session where the entire session is you going, ah, oh, ah, oh, ah, ah, yeah. And that is 8 hours of that, which ruins your voice. I did it for less than a minute, and my voice already hurts. There were big name voice actors that were talking about voiceover sessions that they left coughing up blood because they had actually damaged their vocal cords. There were voice actors that did permanent damage to their vocal cords to the point where they were no longer able to do the roles they used to because their voice changed so drastically after injuring them. Fun fact, your vocal cords can get injured in a lot of different ways, and once you do that, most of the damage is permanent. Now, surgery and things like that have gotten a lot better. It used to be if you got a thing called vocal nodules, which is really common for singers that pushed themselves too hard and didn't use the best methods for singing and supporting your voice. They would develop this thing called vocal nodules. They're basically just little bumps that grow in your vocal cords. And they destroy the ability of the vocal cords to vibrate the way that they're supposed to, so they have to be removed. And the old surgery for that would cause scar tissue to form because there wasn't a way to stop that. And so if you got vocal nodules, your singing career was done. You might be able to reinvent yourself and be able to keep doing things. A really good example of this, Julie Andrews, used to have this amazing, phenomenal voice. She's probably one of the best sopranos that has... of her generation, definitely. Probably one of the best sopranos that has ever existed. She was phenomenal. I don't think she got vocal nodules, but she did have to have surgery. And the surgery left some scar tissue, and now she cannot sing anywhere near what she used to be able to. She started doing a little bit more singing recently, but she doesn't have the voice that she used to have, and she had an amazing voice. Nowadays, I believe it might have been Billie Eilish or somebody real big right now, actually got vocal nodules because they were touring, and it's really rough on your voice, and they're actually able to have them removed without causing permanent damage. So the surgery has gotten better. But a lot of damage to your vocal cords is permanent. And it will permanently change how your voice works. And if you are a voice actor, that means that the reel that you give people so that they know what they're getting is no longer accurate, and that can ruin your career. For decades, voice actors were literally destroying their voices just to remain employed, and they were making shit wages doing it. Screen Actors Guild finally, I want to say it was like 10 or 15 years ago. It was relatively recent. Finally went, oh, maybe we should protect the voice actors who were required to be a part of the Screen Actors Guild, but were getting very little benefits at all because they wouldn't collective bargain for them. And they finally got some stuff written into Screen Actors Guild contracts that limited voiceover sessions to either 4 or 8 hours, depending on the stuff that you're doing, and mandatory breaks, and all these things that literally in every other field are standard. But the Screen Actors Guild didn't give a flying fuck about voice actors until they got big enough that people started recognizing voice actors by name. So, yes, the whole point of this rant is SAG-AFTRA is a scam, and they're actively backstabbing the vast majority of their members to benefit the top probably 5 to 10% who will actually make money off of this. Yeah, so I don't support SAG-AFTRA. I don't support the Writers Guild because they're just as corrupt and did just as many screwed up things. I do support writers. I do support actors. And I think the best way I could see in supporting both of those is telling them to drop their union. And force the union to actually work for its members instead of exploit its members to enrich themselves. They're corrupt, they're disgusting, and now everybody is finding out what I've known for years. So, hope you guys really enjoyed that. I didn't. It really upsets me that something that I have such a passion for has been exploited and turned into a mockery of itself by a bunch of money-hungry, fame-starved morons that believe that they're above the rest of the world. It's sickening, because acting in and of itself is probably one of the most life-changing experiences I've had is learning things about myself through the roles that I've taken, doing experimental theater and things like that, and finding out about cultures that I didn't know existed, and thought processes that I didn't realize people actually went through. Like, acting is a transformative process, and it is absolutely a wonderful experience, and the actual art of acting and the craft of acting is phenomenal, and it changes people's lives. Not just actors, but it can change other people. A good life-changing performance will change your audience. They will be able to experience things that they can't experience reading a book or talking to a friend. It is a vital part of society, and it is run by a bunch of moguls that only care about how much money they can make and how much power they can gain. It's disgusting, and it needs to stop. Screen Actors Guild needs to go away. Every single member needs to relinquish their membership, because they don't work for actors. Actors work for the Screen Actors Guild, and they are cult-like in their attempts to control their members. I have seen incredibly intelligent people, when presented with things like this, they go, "No, our loyalty is always to the Screen Actors Guild first." I know churches that aren't that crazy. Anyway, it's all for me today. I will see you guys tomorrow. All right? Bye-bye.